Alrighty. Got myself a MacBook Air from the Mercari app. Bought a few things from there. Been lucky on a couple. Some I kind of knew I was buying shit, so I wasn't expecting anything different, but this one is in pretty nice shape. Uh, Typical scratches, a bit of dings. In the pictures, well, looks like it was still on. You can see there's no backlight. Trackpad looks like it works. You can kind of see it in there, the screen. So what I'm hoping is it's just a simple backlight circuit. Majority of the time, little corrosion gets under there. Um, right where the backlight circuit is. So I'm going to take her apart and take a quick look at that. Hopefully it's not something like a burnt LCD cable, because those are a real pain in the ass. Because you're forced to take the whole front bezel, this aluminum strip off in order to even get access to that, which is a nightmare. These are aluminum. This little strip, it bends. It's not easy to remove and replace. You're almost better off buying one of these bezels if you're going to do that. So hopefully not that. Now for the boring part, let me take all the screws out. Hopefully everyone had a good Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody got all their shopping done and didn't get stabbed or shot while at the mall. Alright, looks like I got them all out. Just a little bit dusty in there. Looks like it could use a good cleaning. Nothing too major that looks obvious at the moment. Let's see what these little things are. No idea what that yummy stuff is. Potato chip, maybe? Tiny little bit of green there, nothing major. The edge here where the vent is, that's where all the common, typical liquid damage stuff happens. but I don't really see anything on the top side of the board. The liquid indicator things did not change, so not sure what the hell that is. The one thing I like about buying from individuals rather than like a computer place that's collected them, they will tend to leave the hard drives in them, which is nice. I don't have to purchase another one. All right, well, let me pull it out. One thing you can tell, like the board's never been removed. This adhesive is still intact here. It's a little piece of foam. Usually tears when you pull it off like that. So you know no one's taken it apart before. You can tell on the screws they're not all stripped out looking or metal. I always like to remove the battery because it makes it a little easier to access pulling these cables out. Plus I get to see if there's any corrosion underneath from the trackpad area. Luckily these batteries are removable in the MacBook Airs just by a few screws. They're not glued in like the MacBook Pros. MacBook Pros are a nightmare. What's interesting when you actually take apart a MacBook Pro, they have these little spots, almost like this, where they could have screwed them in instead. There is spots that look like it was a thought, and instead they glued them in and made life much more difficult for the average Joe to replace them. Anybody could have done this, replace the battery. Thank you, Apple. Wow, that was in there pretty tight. So this is a 820-3437 board, common in the MacBook Airs from 2013, I think, to 2014. Sorry if you guys, I don't know if you see the top of my damn head. Probably. I need to move my camera. Hey, mama. I don't really pay much attention to the chat while I'm doing this because the way I got my setup is like a 32-inch TV, and that's all I have right now. My monitor is being utilized. I don't know if you can see behind me. I got other projects. Got a little old server box or old server that I purchased to kind of mess around with. My Pi back there, I was flashing a BIOS chip the other day on a different MacBook. I'm going to try to keep my back of my head out of the image so you can see what the hell I'm doing. Nothing wrong here on the VDS connector, which is nice. Ooh. I forget where the hell Maybe that's a little better. You can see a little more. All right. After you do a bunch of these, you kind of get a little bit of a pattern of how you like to remove it. So like I said, right on the back side under here, I believe is, yeah, where the backlight circuit is. A lot of cases will be a little drip or something that got on it and blew it. If not, ouch. I probably should have did measurements prior to taking it all apart. I'm going with the obvious stuff. Usually you can check voltage on the backlight pin to see if you even have it, backlight voltage. Probably what I should have done, would have been the proper way. Kind of jumping the gun here with the assumption of what is typically wrong. I like to take out these two big screws for the screen hinge. There's a little metal piece here that has the antenna wires going to it. You can see I just pulled them out of the way because there is a little screw under here for the heatsink fins that screws it down. And the wires are usually in the way and I don't want to damage those wires, so I like to do it that way. Alright, let's pull her out. This cable is for the camera. Alright, backlight circuit is right here. See a little bit of green there. Let's see what it looks like under the microscope. A lot of dust. Lots of dust. Nothing the ordinary eye. I don't really see a problem over here. But we'll take a look. Alright. So you can see a lot of pubes or whatever that is. Dust, but what you're going to see right about here is some white crusty stuff, which looks like corrosion. I don't know how well that will focus for you guys. There we go. Get a lot of camera shake when you're zoomed in that much. But right here looks like salty stuff. So I can't really tell yet. I'm gonna scrape some of this stuff off or brush it off. That's doesn't look like it really ate it away. Look like somebody ate a bag of chips next to it. Some fucking Pringles. Honestly. Like salt crystals everywhere. Alright. I don't know what the hell I did with my little spare toothbrush I had to brush this shit off. I probably left it somewhere in my basement. One second, guys. I'm gonna go grab a spare toothbrush to use to brush it off. All right. Now let's see, without all the hair. Don't really see any major issues here. But let's look at it at an angle. What I'm going to try to do is find it on the board here, where my finger is. And there is a little bit of corrosion there. Those little solder balls, mostly on that one. Okay. What I'm going to do is throw some flux under there and reflow it. I'm just making sure that's not broken. It's just a test point typically, but they do go somewhere sometimes. I should have tested for backlight voltage when I had it in. Just going to look up on the board view for this board real quick. What did I say it was? 3437. All right, which one's backlight? 3 and 4. Where's the fuse? There it is. I just want to check, make sure that fuse is good. Oops. Alright, fuse is good. So pins 3 and 4. Nothing looks funny there. Okay. Where'd you go? My guess is going to be that one. So, like I said, I'm going to put a little flux on here and do a little flux and boil, kind of reflow that chip. All right. I just gave the chip a little nudge to see it wiggle. And I'll let that cool off a little bit. The discoloring on the test points is no big deal. It's as long as it's not corroded. That's pretty typical oxidized. Yeah, that's the word. Just looking over other things. Ooh, what do we got there? That is our BIOS chip, EFI. If this thing does not have good connections, you definitely can have some issues. while this is cooling down, I'll just kind of touch up some stuff, I guess. Doesn't look like it did anything crazy. The board wouldn't even, that screen we saw, you wouldn't even get that if there was an issue with BIOS, so not too concerned. Off the top of my head, I do not remember what this circuit is. See a little bit of corrosion in there though. So what you'd be concerned with in these types of things is those will get eaten away completely, and then that via going, or that trace going from here to here, will end up being broken because it basically eats it away. But it looks all right, and what I will do is make sure we got continuity there. We do. And since I'm here, I like to pop a little bit of flux and some new solder on that, just because I can. And there we go. Stop that corrosion, I'll give this pop in the ultrasonic cleaner. Just to be safe before I sell it, once I fix it. And this is, I believe, my 5 volt and 3 volt chip. This is what creates the 3.3 and the 5 volt rails. Doesn't look like it got too deep with that. I know I'm not in focus. When I push down on the board, it obviously takes it out of focus. So I'm going to scrape some of this away. This is very much eating away at the solder. I don't think we're going to have an issue with trace being bad. Slow work here, guys. What else you got to do on a Monday evening? Wet, rainy, slushy out. Than to watch some guy solder some shit on a MacBook board. The ultrasonic's gonna get this type of stuff. It'll get right in there. just want to make sure it didn't go under, because it'll do that. It'll travel under the coating, and you won't know till you pick at it a little. Make sure we got continuity there, though. All right, definitely do. I'm going to pop a little solder on all of that, because I can. I got my micro tip on, so that big cap might not do so well. Yeah, it's all right. It did fine. Alrighty. That's cleaned up. All right, I think we're good for everything else. We'll see if reflowing that did the trick. If not, I may have to replace it. I gotta double check. I don't know if I have one. I might have one. All right. Let's check the chat. We'll pop it back in the board quick and see if we got backlight. And if not, I'll do a couple measurements and see what it may be doing. One thing, I'm using a camcorder. One downfall to that is it likes to adjust the brightness, I think, so it looks a little dark. Come on, you little stinky cable. There we go. Let's see, LVDS connector, that's for the screen. So back in the old days, so you had like, so these are LEDs, backlight, so you had your fluorescent like backlight. It's like fluorescent light bulbs. Those ones needed an inverter, and that inverter was usually inside the bottom of the screen. When they went to LED, you just need a LED voltage to boost it. I can pull up the circuit and show you in a minute if you really want to see what it is. So with these MacBooks, the chargers are usually, I think, 16, 17 volts. Battery kicks out, I think, about 8.7, somewhere around there. 7, 8 volts. So the main voltage on the board is about 8.56 volts. So for backlight, you need about 20 or so volts. So the way they do that is they use uh, this inductor, this coil, and they use a switching mechanism. So the backlight chip is going to turn on voltage on and off at a certain rate. Every time you turn off and turn the voltage back on, it gives a large jolt. Um, that jolt is basically what's giving it enough voltage to power the backlight. The timing is how that works. It determines how fast to pulse that by a feedback line that comes back from the screen to the chip. The chip determines from that how to adjust or when to adjust the timing. All right, I don't need to hook that up. I don't really need to hook the camera up either. I just need power, battery. I don't even think I'm going to need that. All right, so this board, what it likes to do when you hit the power button after it's been disconnected, usually it'll turn on and off 3 times before it does anything. I won't see backlight probably until shortly after, so let's see if I get lucky. There's one. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Wrong way. There we go. I don't want to see my crotch. What did I do? There we go. I don't have the SSD in right now, so what I'm looking for is a question mark. It doesn't look good. Where's my phone? Ah, there it is. I really hope it's not a screen. Still no backlight. What I did there is I just used my screen to my light on my phone to shine through the little Apple logo on the back. All right, so I'm going to take a look at what voltage I have. Likely this is going to need that chip that I was just looking at that I reflowed, replaced. Let's see if I can get that on the screen. So 3 and 4 are right here. I got 7.35 volts. That is not enough. That is not going to make the backlight come on. So I'm going to replace that chip. I got to see if I have one. I can try to steal one off of another board. They're a little tough. I don't know if I have a, what am I thinking of here? A stencil to put in new balls. So let me get to that. this off. All right, let me see if I got a chip. I had ordered some recently and I don't really remember what I did with them. That's a BIOS. These are spares. 3476. Screws. What are those? For iPhones. More screws. Audio chip. Nope. LEDs connectors. Capacitors. Scrap. What do we got there? That looks like it. Alright, I think I got them. Can't see. Yep, that'd be them. Alright, I got two. I'm just going to check a few things here at this chip as well. Make sure I'm not missing something. Resistors look fine. Make sure I don't have any shorts there. That looks good. Yep. Okay. I am pretty certain it's this chip itself, so I'm going to keep an idea where the orientation is. Got the little dot there in the left corner, left lower corner, so that's pin number 1. That's the way I'll need to put it back. Before I do that, I'm just going to put power to the board And I want to check, make sure I got some voltages at that chip. Okay. Maybe not. Oh, it is not pushed in all the way. There we go. Fan spinning. This should be 5 volts. Indeed it is. I know that one. I gotta look at this board view again. Where is 3B3? Goes to the one right above. And I got 3-3. All right. So I don't have any issue. I'm pretty sure what I'm doing is the right thing to do. The chip itself is coming off. Man, I'm shaky today. Going to use my bigger tip to soak up that solder. These can be a little tricky. Ooh, is that damage? Okay, guys. So what I just noticed is this has burnt out. So you can see right there, that's part of the board missing. Let me see what those pins are. They're right there. Bummer. This could be a little trickier than I thought. So that is 3 volts, backlight SDA, right? Let me make sure. Yeah, it's likely the 3 volt. So the one this one here, that's 3 volt coming off that cap, I believe. So let's take a look. What are you doing here? Get out of there. 3 volt goes up to that cap and goes, let me do a continuity test and see if that's still there. It is not. Where do you, well, hang on, sorry guys. I'm on the wrong setting. Maybe it is. It still is. Alright, well, that's good. Where do you go? You go to this resistor. Top one. It's still intact. Backlight I-Sen 3. Where do you go? Other side of the board? Yes. What a pain in the dick. Alright, so that one, which one am I looking at again? That one goes to the other side of the board. Alright, this is going to be a little harder. I can't, so you guys won't be able to see this. I'm trying to check for continuity to the other side of the board. Goes to that second resistor. So excuse me while I finagle this. That goes there. Oh man. I'm not sure I'm on it. Doesn't look like it. Hard to do this without being under the microscope. Alright, that's still there. Next one I'm going to look at. So far I've looked at that one. Good, good, good. I'm going to check these two just because they're so close to that spot. If you guys want to see what I'm looking at, let me turn the scope off for a second. Window display. So I'm looking at the chip layout here. looking at the pins that we were just looking at. So I can tell where these go. You know, this goes here, this one goes there, this one went to the other side of the board. This one goes also to the other side of the board and goes to that doohickey. So same thing that I'm going to be doing here. And this is just to make sure none of the vias or traces have burned out. I need to make sure of that before putting the new chip on. In other words, I'd be wasting my time. This is not an easy way of doing this. Come on. All right. That one's good. That's ground. That one shouldn't be an issue. We'll just check the ground. Beautiful. And this one goes to the top of that resistor. What am I doing? All right. So that was a little strange. That I was expecting I was going to have to run some jumpers underneath this thing. So I just checked all of these 6. As you can see, that's where some of the damage is. To the fiberglass layer of the board. It's crazy. I think I want to try to suck up a little bit more of that solder here. So you got to be careful too. You don't want to rip that pad off. So you don't want to be putting too much pressure and digging around on that. All right. Some of the coating came off on that one there. That's okay. All right. I want to take a look underneath the chip itself. Let's see what we got. So there's the dot. So when I flip it over, it's going to be towards the bottom here. I don't see anything really wrong with it as far as physically. All right. Whatever. Hopefully there was just some crud under there that was causing it to be an issue. Man, that worries me. I just don't want to put this on and then have it be an issue. But don't see anything wrong with it. Let me make sure that's not being shorted to ground. It is not. That should be the only one. All right, fellas, ladies, let's put a new chip on. Flux, please. I do not want hairs in my flux. So these are how these things are done. These are on a spool. These feed through a machine, like the old dot matrix printers or scantrons, right? And the machine picks that up and puts it on a board. Pretty nuts. So this can be a little bit of a tough one, mostly eyeballing it. You don't want to push down on this chip. And I'm a little shaky today, which makes it even harder. You don't want the chip to blow away either. So this can be a little hard. Yeah. Oh, burning my hand. The bigger chips are a little easier because they don't fly away so easy. Come on. There we go. See how it moved into place? That's what I want. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna be pissed. How about that? It looks okay. Looking at chat, I'm fixing B-Rad Glurup. Hey, buddy. I'm fixing a MacBook Air motherboard It had no backlight. Um, yep, Junior, it does suck. Jake, there you can put some conformal coating on there to try to build it up if you really wanted to. Not really worth it. The continuity's good. Only thing I may have had to have done, I thought that that would have been burnt out. I would have had to have ran a trace or a jumper wire from that capacitor, likely that 3-volt one, going under the chip, uh, in between the balls, and then to that ball. And that does work. It's just working with really small, fine hair type wire. Um, it definitely can be done. I've run some pretty small jumpers for things. Under chips is a little harder, but all I'm doing right now is a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to clean up some of the flux. I don't necessarily need to do this. This flux is not conductive, but I don't know. It's like a peace of mind for me, I guess. All right, still a little warm. Let's see what we got now. One thing I should also have done really, um, there is a backlight enable. So that comes from, up here, right? And backlight boost. Let me pull up that circuit. Which comes from you. Okay, let's pop it in and see what it does. Sorry, that's not very bright. It's gonna be a bummer if it doesn't, because that means I might have replaced it for nothing, even though there was that corrosion under there. So I'm gonna pop in my external drive. This way it actually loads to something instead of the question mark. Option button. We gotta go through the battery cycle here. Number 2. And this should be next, number 3. Black screen. Please do something. Pow. There it is, fellas. Backlight circuit. Just make sure that it loads. And then, like I said, I'll strip the board, run it through an ultrasonic bath. Basically have a big jewelry cleaner in a sense. All right. Always feels good to win one. I had a bad, I wouldn't say a bad streak. I had another MacBook Air from someone that looked like it has some drop damage. From what I've kind of hear on these types of things is drop damage can cause, though, just like those balls you saw under that backlight circuit. This is the CPU, PCH combined in one chip, and it can cause those balls underneath there to crack or the trace going to them. I cannot reball or reflow a CPU. I could blast the shit out of it with heat, but it's not going to be consistent. That I can take the nozzle off of this thing to get a bigger footprint, but that's a lot of heat direct in those areas. Likely going to damage the board by doing that. So that one was a no go, was a no fix. I had a older 2009 recently. Um, it was an issue where it wouldn't boot up. It was acting. It was basically like the board was powering on completely. And thanks, Jake. Um, but what it was doing there, there was actually a short on an audio chip. So the audio chip was shorting out a voltage rail, like a 1.5, a 1.2 or 1.5 volt rail. So that was what was causing that to boot. So I removed the chip and the machine would boot up and was working. It had no audio, obviously without the chip. I replaced the chip. Board continued to work, but I still had no audio. So that was tough because there's a couple traces that would go from that chip to the PCH on that particular board, which is separate from the CPU. And again, it's one of those things, there's nothing I can really do about that. So I don't know if it was a PCH issue or the trace or something there was damaged or burned out from that short that was inside the layer of the board, which I could do nothing about. And then as I'm playing around with it, eventually the board stopped turning on again. So I gave up with that one and just, it was a cheap older one, 2009. I ended up just, it's parts now at this point. Uh, I had gotten a MacBook Pro, which is good to go, and I am going to sell that one. It is all done, just final cleaning. The 2013 MacBook Pro, that one was no power when I got it. I didn't video it or tape it. I probably should have. It was a good one. Um, After checking a few things, there was a little bit of corrosion. I found a trace that was um, corroded a little bit, replaced a jumper to that, and the board finally got power, but represented a short. The amount of amperage it was pulling, the CPU was getting hot, so that ended up being a shit board. I replaced the board, got it for a decent price, so I'm not really gonna make money on that one. Dumb question probably, but most electrical knowledge comes from home. Auto type working. Would you ever put in some type of corrosion inhibitor like fluid film or white lithium? Um, you mean on a board, fluid film or white lithium? I mean, you could conformal coat the entire board if you wanted to, I suppose. I mean, that's how they waterproof stuff as it is when it comes to boards. The I'd be a little worried afterwards about repair if you did have a problem. But the stuff scrapes off pretty easily, so I wouldn't think it'd be too big of a deal. There you see more of like chip underfill and things like that. So what they'll do, mostly on the iPhones and mobile devices, you'll see a chip. Even this, you'll see this. Yeah, yeah. Here, I'll throw it under the scope so you can see what I'm talking about. So you'll see under this board, see how there's this black stuff right there. That's undercoat, underfill. So I mean, it does two things. It keeps liquid from going under there, which is nice. And it's supposed to help with shock damage. So people think dropping their device shouldn't, uh, should be able to take it. But the fact of the matter is that's a lot of impact and vibration to the chips themselves. So, like I said, underneath you can cause damage. Um, that's just what happens. So sometimes you're unable to fix stuff because of that. But lithium, nah, it's more like a grease. I wouldn't mess with anything like a grease, oil. All right, so if you're just interested in what I did, uh, this MacBook Air had no backlight. Upon inspection, which I should have did initially, is checked voltage here, which I did kind of after the fact. Pins 3 and 4, you should be getting like around 20-ish or so volts. I was only getting 7, which tells you one thing is the circuit's working in a sense. It's just not switching. It's not boosting. So all of these components that are right next to it here on the board actually are working, and the fuse is good, or I wouldn't be getting anything there. So what that would have told me is that is good. And on the flip side of the board, probably should have been showing that on the board. All right. So yeah, so I'm looking, pins 3 and 4, 7 volts, fuse is good. It's just not boosting. So this is your that inductor there, that coil that's right there uh, to boost, and it's just not boosting. So that's typically going to be caused because of the chip underneath not switching. So it's this chip here is, like I said earlier, it's supposed to turn on and off, on and off. Each time it does that, out of the other end of that coil, it gets a boost of voltage. That voltage is regulated on how fast or slow this thing determines to switch. It'll determine that off of a feedback from the LCD, letting it know that it is getting voltage there, and it'll keep track of that voltage and adjust accordingly. So, all right, well, hopefully if people continue to watch, you learned a little something. Um, next, I should have another MacBook coming soon, uh, off of Mercari as well. It's a MacBook Pro. Hopefully that one is good to go. We'll see. So I hope you guys learned something. You have a good evening. Catch you maybe tomorrow. Peace out.